Sir, that's my father's drawing, I blurted Trey, shaking in my hands. Two crystal glasses kissing like nervous teeth while every head at the table turned toward the waitress, who forgot to be invisible. Me. Leonard Whitaker paused mid-sentence, the kind of pause rich men use to measure damage, then followed my eyes to the framed blueprint sitting like a trophy in the middle of the table prototype. Solar compression. Turbine edges, yellowed corners, proud, and there in the bottom right, the signature I grew up watching on napkins and junk mail and the backs of church programs. George A. William, my dad. I didn't mean to say it out loud. I swear it just jumped out of me like a spark hitting dry grass. Leonard set his glass down carefully, like even gravity worked for him, and gave me a smile with no warmth in it. I'm sorry. What did you say? I swallowed, tried to steady my voice. That drawing, it belongs to my father, sir. That's his design, that's his signature. A couple of guests did that rich people cough, the kind that says this is awkward and entertaining. One guy in a silver suit leaned in, squinted at the corner, and said, "It does say George A. William." Leonard's jaw twitched, but the smile stayed like paint that won't chip. "You must be mistaken," he said, "proprietary schematic. My company's work 2010, you know how it is." I shook my head, because I did know how it is. People like him tell people like me what's real and expect us to nod. I know my father's signature. I said I know the way he loops the A, I know it, because I traced it when I was 9, and he was too tired to remember his own coffee. The room got thinner, knives setting down whispers, trying to be quiet, and failing, and then someone laughed under their breath. And then Leonard moved, fast. A slap, not to break me, just to put me back on the floor where he thought I belonged. Yeah, that happened. The tray fell, glass shattered. Manager appeared like he'd been summoned by a spell, grabbed my elbow hard enough to bruise, and hissed, "You're finished." I was out the back door in less than a minute, apron in a ball face, burning dignity, scrambling to keep up. On the Q train home, the lights flickered that cheap fluorescent way, and I stared at a stained floor and thought about my mother's pills and my brother's bus pass and how I had just set our life on fire. And then I pulled out the old photo in my wallet of me and Dad at Prospect Park, turned it over, and there it was. To my brilliant girl who will change the world. Dad. The same signature, same loop, same fight in the ink. So I did what people like me always do when the world says hush. I opened my laptop. George A. William patent. William turbine design. Whitaker theft. I dug until my eyes stung and my fingers ached, and I found a blog from 2012, written by a reporter with nothing left to lose. Carl Thompson headline like a dare, the inventor who vanished and the billionaire who profited. He laid out names, dates, a shell company called LWT Energy, a research phase where contributors went missing from paperwork, one of them named George William. It wasn't proof, but it was a door, so I knocked. I emailed him at 2:11 a.m. "I think my father is the man you wrote about." He replied in 20 minutes, like he'd been awake for a decade waiting for that message. "Meet me at 215 East 47th, 10 a.m. Don't bring anyone, be careful." Carl looked like the truth had chewed him up and spit him back out, still stubborn. His office smelled like dust and burnt coffee and paper that had been touched too many times. "You've got your father's eyes," he said, and slid a thin folder across the desk. Clippings, a photo of Dad, next to a younger Leonard. A patent receipt so faded it felt haunted. They worked together, he said. Your dad had the brain, Leonard had the money, and the oldest story in America did what it always does. I asked him what we do, and he said 3 words that felt like a ladder. Find the records. That night we slipped into the Federal Records archive with a nervous clerk named Benny and a key that opened a door labeled 4C. Rows of metal cabinets, air that smelled like old rain, my heart beating like the building could hear it. We found it in a drawer stamped LWT Holdings, but tucked alongside was the thing that made my knees go weak. William Advanced Energy, March 3, 2011. My father's full signature beneath a notarized stamp. We photographed every page, shut the drawer, and left just ahead of footsteps that didn't sound like Benny's. The first text came before I got off the subway. Stop digging. The second was waiting on my pillow. You made a mistake today. You know what I mean. That's when fear becomes fuel or it becomes a cage. I chose fuel. We found Dad's colleague, Dr. Sheila Thompson, in a small house with plants on the sill and a tired courage in her voice. She told me about late-night simulations, how Dad planned to file independently because things didn't smell right in Leonard's world. When I laid the photos down, she traced his name with a fingertip and said, "I'll help even if it costs me again." Carl called an investigative bulldog named Lena Cruz at the Observer, and we met her in a diner where the coffee tasted like decisions. She didn't smile, didn't flinch, just asked for proof. And when Sheila handed over an old drive with lab audio, we listened to my father's voice fill that cracked vinyl booth. March 1st, 2011. If something happens to me, I want it on record. I, George A. William invented this turbine design alone. We all sat there breathing like we'd been underwater. Give me 2 days, Lena said. If it verifies front page Sunday. Sunday hit like thunder. Stolen genius. The headline read, "The Black Engineer Behind the Billionaire's Empire." The article had our archive photos expert analysis. Sheila's testimony, pieces of a puzzle no one was supposed to see. The city woke up mad. Leonard went on camera with his sad, serious voice and called me a troubled young woman, possibly manipulated by disgruntled former employees, which would have been funny if it wasn't so predictable. The site was hacked that night, Sheila's place was broken into, and Carl missed a meeting. I found his door ajar, papers everywhere, blood like a bad whisper on the floor, and under his bookshelf, a taped burner phone with one message. If you're hearing this, I'm compromised. The drive is locked with the last thing your father said to you. You told me once, use it, finish this, don't trust anyone. I typed it with shaking hands. Because the truth doesn't build itself, pumpkin, you have to fight for it. And the drive unlocked like a held breath. Emails, NDAs, silent payouts, internal memos where Leonard talked about acquiring technologies from terminated employees. Not a one-off theft, a business model. The twist wasn't just that he stole. It was that the machine was built to erase people like my dad on purpose over and over. We followed one last breadcrumb to an old foundry where Dad had first tested the coil, unscrewed a red USB from beneath a workbench, and ran from 2 men who stepped out of the shadows with earpieces and the wrong kind of patience. Lena barreled up in a van like a headline with wheels, and we didn't stop until we were under Whitaker Tower, staring at a badge reader and the kind of fear that's almost excitement. We went in. The server room hummed like a secret. I plugged the red USB into a port, and a light blinked green like a tiny yes. Carl's recorded voice came through the speakers. "Welcome back, Leonard. Did you really think you could bury the truth forever?" And 30 mirrored uploads launched to newsrooms, watchdogs, agencies, anywhere one switch couldn't kill it. Leonard walked in with 2 guards, and that same painted-on smile tried to tell me the media would chew me up and spit me out by Friday. And Lena just raised her phone and said, "We're live, say hi to everybody." You could see it in his eyes, that flick when a man realizes the room got bigger than him. He lunged. Sheila swung a fire extinguisher like a woman who's done with fear. Alarms screamed. And then the FBI poured in and read him his rights while someone in a windbreaker said chain of custody confirmed like a bedtime story I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. People called me brave, but I'm just a daughter who recognized a signature and refused to pretend I didn't. Carl turned up alive but hurt. Sheila signed an affidavit with a steady hand. The Observer doubled down with lawyers who don't blink. And I stood outside the courthouse weeks later and looked Leonard in the eye and said, "You thought if you owned the paper, you owned the genius. You thought if you erased a name, you erased a life. You didn't. You just made the rest of us louder." We opened the George William Foundation in a brick building that smells like sawdust, and New Chances built a platform called Ignite, so a kid in a small apartment can timestamp their idea and say, "This is mine," and mean it. But if you want a neat ending, I don't have one. The day after sentencing, a plain envelope landed on my desk. No return address, just a thumb drive and a note that said, "You've only scratched the surface. Follow the money. Start in Lagos." So here I am holding my father's photo in one hand and a plain itinerary in the other, trying to decide if justice is a courtroom or a road that keeps going. You know what I mean? If you felt that moment with me, that first spark, that subway ride, that server room hum, tell me where you stand. Who owns an idea, the one who funds it or the one who bleeds for it? Have you seen someone brilliant get erased because they didn't look like the brochure? Drop your thoughts, argue with me, tell me what you would have done, and if you think I should get on that plane, say the word. Like the video, share it with someone building in silence, and remember what my father told me. The truth doesn't build itself. We have to fight for it.